to portray the Prophet, peace be upon him, as a way, but to portray Muslim men as violent men that are in need of restraint, and Muslim women as victims that are in need of rescue. And therefore, that's why we have an entire policy that is built on taming the rest of the world, right? So portraying the Prophet, peace be upon him, in that way is really meant to portray the Muslim, the ideal Muslim in a certain way, and the ideal, or the Muslim society in a certain way. And so a question then comes up, wait, so are you saying that you support child marriage? Right? So that's the catch at the end. Are you saying you support child marriage? And the answer is no. I'm saying that characterizing Aisha as a child is wrong, empirically wrong, can be proven wrong and inappropriate. In fact, our ulama, our scholars, understood throughout history that it was okay, not only okay, but it's encouraged to put safety protocols in place for the welfare of society. So no, there is absolutely nothing of that sort. There is absolutely no justification. And I can hold, without any conflict in my identity, that Aisha radiallahu anha, the age that's been assigned to her would be considered a child's age in my time, but not so in her time, and be against the abuse of children through children marriage as it exists today. But if there is no norm, and there are many ways, and I don't want to go too much into detail because I actually want to talk about the story of the marriage of Aisha and the person of Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, since we're talking about letting the discourse die. But if you think about this, the fact that 50 years ago in the United States, the average age of marriage was significantly less in America than it is today. Like my grandmother got married when she was 14 years old in Palestine, right? And that was completely normal. There was absolutely nothing with it. That doesn't mean that I support the marriage of a 14-year-old today, but that the age of marriage changes so dramatically over time. And across states, there is no consensus, even in the United States, about what the appropriate age of marriage is. And let's face it, if we're talking about, the definition of a child changing due to life expectancy, due to environments, due to education and how we view education in our societies today, then it could be that in our lifetimes, there could come a time where the minimum age of marriage is 20, right? Or 21, right? And maybe at that time we'd be like, 19-year-olds are children. They shouldn't be married. So that age will fluctuate probably in our own lifetimes. Not only that, but if you think about the obsession with characterizing the Prophet, peace be upon him, in a certain way, and characterizing the Muslim world in a certain way, and then you ask yourself, well, at what age are people taught, are children taught to experience, to experiment and experience in intimate fashions? So then how does that factor into the way we view the age of marriage in different parts of the world and in this part of the world here? The point being that these are things that require much more intelligent discourse. And Aisha radiallahu anha in herself, who is an extremely personal person, Aisha gave us access to very personal elements of her life, never once hinted at any single form of abuse that could potentially come or manifest in an imbalanced marriage, never once hinted at any of the dynamics or any of the features that are prevalent in a child marriage as being prevalent in her interaction, not just with the Prophet, peace be upon him, but in her interaction with larger society. The position that she held in larger society is just as significant in combating that narrative that Aisha radiallahu anha was some child that was forced into a situation. So what is the story of Aisha radiallahu anha's marriage to the Prophet, peace be upon him? Well, first of all, one of the things that doesn't get spoken about is how normal was the engagement of Aisha to the Prophet, peace be upon him, and the marriage of Aisha to the Prophet, peace be upon him. She was actually engaged before him. She was engaged to Jubayr ibn Mut'im, a man by the name of Jubayr ibn Mut'im. And Aisha was not sought out by the Prophet, peace be upon him, for marriage, but instead suggested to him both by a human being and an angel. And Jibreel alayhi salam after a human being. Who was the human being that introduced Aisha to the Prophet, peace be upon him, or suggested the marriage of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and Aisha radiallahu anha? It was Khawla, may Allah be pleased with her. And she came to the Prophet, peace be upon him, and she said to the Prophet, peace be upon him, as he lost his only wife for the first 53 years of his life, the only woman he had ever married up until 53 years old in a society that had unrestricted polygamy. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, is grieving the one woman that he was ever married to in Khadija. May Allah be pleased with her. And Khawla, may Allah be pleased with her, trying to get the Prophet, peace be upon him, remarried. And she introduces to the Prophet, peace be upon him, Aisha radiallahu anha. And she introduces Aisha to the Prophet, peace be upon him, in this way. She says, Bintu ahabbi khalqillahi ilayk. She didn't even introduce her as Aisha. She said, what about the daughter of the most beloved person in the world to you? Abu Bakr, her father. What about the daughter of the most beloved person in the world to you? And the Prophet, peace be upon him, immediately knew who she was talking about. So she went to Rumman, the mother of Aisha, radiallahu ta'ala anha, and she says, Ma adkhala Allahu alaykum min al-khayri wal-baraka. What an amazing blessing that Allah has entered upon you. So Rumman said, Wama dhak, what is that? She said, Arsalani Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam akhtubu alayhi Aisha, that the Prophet, peace be upon him, sent me to you so that I could carry out the engagement of the Prophet, peace be upon him, to Aisha. Rumman was ready to lock it up then. She said, I wish I could just go ahead and do this now, but I gotta wait for Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu to come home. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu comes home, and Khawla was waiting. She tells Abu Bakr that the Prophet, peace be upon him, is here to, or the Prophet, peace be upon him, has agreed to marry your daughter and sent me to convey that. You know what Abu Bakr's first reaction was? Was not, oh, she's young. Was not even that she's engaged. He goes, wait a minute. وَهَلْ تَصْلُحُ لَهُ وَهِيَ بِنْتُ أَخِي? Is she fit to marry him when she is the daughter of his brother? Because Abu Bakr and the Prophet, peace be upon him, were that close. So wait a minute, but he's my brother, right? So that was the first concern that he had, that the closeness of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and Abu Bakr was closer than the closeness of a blood